But not that type of grief. What's up, everybody? You're tuned into the Sisters in Therapy podcast. I'm Dr. Mercedes.
I'm Dr. B.
I'm Dr. T.
So today's session, we are talking about grief, but not the grief that you think. So we're going to get into it.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that because Google has a very specific definition of what grief is.
Let's get into it.
And really, it basically just says grief is a deep sorrow, specifically that's caused by someone's death.
Mm.
But as we've gotten older,
Right.
And as we've lived more life and as we've talked to different people with different life experiences.
As we become therapists.
As we've become
The
therapists.
therapist in me is saying it's not expansive enough.
It's not expansive enough. Very good. So, where do we want to start? Because I do have the stages of grief.
Okay.
I do think that's essential to point out because
Okay.
obviously grief is an expansive concept or reality anyway.
Okay.
So where do you think is a good place?
Okay. So the definition is not wrong. It just doesn't have to end like it ended.
Right.
It's really to any loss, not just the
For
loss
sure.
of someone.
Right.
So the sorrow part.
The sorrow is correct.
Grief essentially is the emotional response to a loss.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially what grief is.
Yes.
Any loss.
Any
Yes.
loss.
Any loss.
We experience a lot of loss as humans.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Do you find that when you point that out, like that's a grieving process, people are often surprised that you pointed to either a loss of a job or a relationship or whatever? Like, are your clients sometimes surprised that that is a part of what they're experiencing?
Some of mine, not all of them. I will say those who have maybe like had a history of like being in therapy or maybe just a little bit more familiar with it versus those that are new to therapy may not recognize it as grief and loss, whereas others do. So I think it just depends.
Okay. So my clients are usually surprised, but they're receptive. And like, tell me more. Like, I think we're getting somewhere here. I think that is what I'm feeling. So yeah, mine are surprised, but like, okay, let's go there.
Yeah, I would say the same. I get a good mixture, especially when it is something that they wanted to end and they're surprised that there's still an emotional response that is aligned with grief, right? Like if they wanted the relationship to be over, they understand that part, but it's still, why am I still feeling this way about this person when I don't want them to be a part of my life anyway?
Right. Oh, I think that's a big one.
Because they miss the experiences with the person.
Right.
Not just that, I'm like, I feel like even people who are going through a divorce, I think it's just
So you're speaking specifically about divorce and relationships, it seems, is what we're talking
Right.
about.
Well, I only brought up that example.
Okay. But this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear that there's this just this idea that they weren't ready for it to end. They hadn't wrapped their mind around. They know they want it to end, but it's still like the ending of something.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's the experience. I don't know if it's what's familiar. I think we just have a hard time letting go of anything, whether it's good or bad. If we're used to it kind of being a part of our lives.
They could be clothes. They could be shoes.
Oh, absolutely.
I've been holding on to this pair of Asics for about 5 years. And I cannot throw them away. I need to throw them away. Oh, no, I need to donate them. But no, I hold on to things.
Yeah.
Especially shoes. I can't let them go.
Who doesn't love shoes, especially sneakers?
I need to let them shoes go.
You probably 5 years and you ain't ever worn them.
I don't wear
Let's
them
talk
all
about
the
this.
time.
No,
let's
we
not.
don't have to process that one later.
Okay, that was just me randomly sharing. Go back to what you were saying. But no, people do have a hard time letting go of items. They mean something. You know, things do have significant meaning sometimes.
Right, for sure.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
So is it the meaning that we're placing on the things, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, that we're having a hard time
Dr.
losing?
TK? I mean, I think that's a part of being human, right? Like I think we got to add context, right? It depends on because things do have sentimental value, right?
Sentimental value.
Yes.
How would you define sentimental value? Because I like the way you put that together.
I would say just there's an emotion, like having an emotional attachment to something.
Okay.
Which would make it sentimental, something important, something of value, something that you would cherish.
Okay.
Right.
A positive emotional.
Right. So like if,
Okay.
I don't know, if we all went to the store and I got this notebook and we just had a really good time. I don't want to get rid of this notebook because I remember that moment in getting this notebook.
Okay.
And that was a cherishable or sentimental moment. So I don't want to get rid of that.
Now, that is actually very therapeutic when people are grieving the loss of someone.
Yes.
That is when these type of things really like come up for me in therapy when we're talking about the grief of a loved one, because they have sentimental value from some items that they shared or some restaurants they went to and things like that. So that part of grief comes up a lot when I'm dealing with people who've lost an actual person.
Right. So then that makes, okay, since we're going in that direction, then what would you classify? How do you know somebody needs to let a thing go then?
Right? Or a person.
Or a person
relationship, a job.
Yeah.
How do they
know? Yeah. Okay.
So what questions do you ask your client?
Right, because I was going to say, because sometimes they don't know it's a problem.
I'm about to say, how do y'all know?
Okay, y'all understand.
So when there is inconsistency.
Say now you're getting too personal.
Right. I think when there are inconsistencies pertaining to what is important to them, right? Does this relationship or does this dynamic, does something reflect what you view love is or what you value? What you're experiencing seems to be the opposite of what you say is important to you, right? I'm not telling
there's
you
a misalignment here.
Right. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just, you pointed out some inconsistencies for me.
I think we've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
What I'll say is if somebody comes to therapy if somebody comes to therapy and they are, I'm not going to say complaining, but they are bringing forth concerns and issues over and over again about the same thing, and then they keep going to that space, we got to have a conversation about, okay, you're going into a space where you're saying you're not being served, it's not serving you. It may be time to consider readjusting or reevaluating the friendships in your life and things like that. I've actually had that conversation a lot with a lot of clients.
You got to be real gentle with those.
Real gentle, but I definitely put it back to you have a responsibility to yourself to navigate this differently. You've tried the problem solving, you've tried these other solutions. Now it's coming back to you and your like. Once we raise the consciousness, once you know that this is not working for you, once we've pointed out all the facts, and you continue to go back, I'm going to say this must be serving something for you.
Okay. Now that's a bit combative.
It might be, we need to get at, baby, why you keep going back? Because you have a responsibility to yourself.
Right.
I can't get you out of that.
Right. Okay. And I'm glad you said that part, but rapport is extremely important when it comes to, right? So like the approaches can be a bit more firm when there's enough rapport, because first 2 sessions, they might not be ready for that.
No, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
I know.
Not in the first 2 sessions, but in the topic of grief, and we're talking about sentimental value, those are also like connections. So when people do step into their autonomy because they've been in therapy and they've kind of got brave enough to say, hey, I can't do this anymore. I don't have the capacity to be a part of this friendship or this relationship, and they choose to leave. Now, while these people are doing what's best for them, there is the element of grief that they weren't expecting.
Absolutely.
Yes.
How do we help them navigate that grief? Because that's what we're talking about.
Okay, I like that question. Normalizing that this comes with the territory of letting something go, right?
Okay.
Even though you acknowledge this is something I very well chose to do.
Autonomy.
Yes, I just chose to remove myself from a situation or a dynamic. Okay, you're asking why. I think we know why. This was a person that was a part of your routine, a part of your life.
Facts.
It makes sense that you still feel multiple things can be true.
Yes.
You can very well still be sad or angry, whatever the emotion is, but you still know the truth is, I had to let that go.
And that goes to show that doing what's best for you is not always easy.
Oh, no.
Agreed.
No.
There is grief. There's an element of grief to doing what's best for you.
Absolutely.
There
Every
is.
time. A lot of it.
What were you about to say, T?
I was going to hit on, like, with normalizing it, I also try to get them to see the beautiful moments and the things that they're letting go of.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there is guilt and shame around, well, why didn't I get out earlier?
Yeah.
Or why didn't I do this? Or why didn't I do that?
Especially in relationships.
Absolutely. So I have to... Again, so kind of almost what I was saying before of, it must be serving some purpose for you. It's meeting some need for you. I don't say that to just call you out or to be mean. It's to say,
it is true though.
You have a need.
Right.
Okay.
And it's okay to have a need.
Okay.
At one point, this was meeting your need.
Okay.
it's okay to celebrate that. It's okay to appreciate the role that it had in your life whenever it played that role.
Okay.
You've just now come to the realization that that's not currently what you need anymore, or that same thing, that relationship is not working for you anymore. And so now it's time to do something different. Again, not having that all or nothing mindset, because people like to say, well, I'm going to just throw away these 3 years, or throw away all that this meant to me. No, you still had pivotal moments, beautiful moments,
right,
that you still get to hold on to.
right.
In grieving relationships, you can, the way you approach the death of someone, like the grieving from that, you can also approach it with multiple losses. So, which means we have to hold space for them to process the grief, which means they're going to want to talk about their relationships, and they're going to want to talk about those connections that they had, which is a part of the grieving process.
Right. I've had some clients say that it's frustrating for them whenever they go talk to friends, who friends are like, well, you were better off without them anyway. Yeah. Or I'm glad you let go of them. And the friends are like, my clients are like, yeah, I get that. And yeah, you're not wrong. However, it's still sad.
And that's an example of when you should probably talk to a professional about that type of complicated situation versus your friends. Because they don't know what they think, they're saying the right thing.
Right.
They think they're being so loving and so supporting.
Yeah. But it kind of pushes you into that, I don't really want to talk. You become isolated, because then you don't, it's like, where's my safe space?
But that's when I encourage my clients to use discernment, knowing what spaces you can have these conversations. Discernment is very important with autonomy. Oh my God, it's so important, because if you go to your great friends about something that they can't hold space for, then you're looking at them upside their head. You got to use discernment.
Yes. Absolutely. And you can teach your friends, though.
Oh, my God. You beat me to it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, girl.
No. Go. You got it. You got it. I was literally about to say that.
Literally, because we're all the same. We think the same thing.
Go for it.
Of course, we're therapists.
But no, so you can teach your friends. You can give them the opportunity that comes with, trying to verbalize your needs and giving them the opportunity to love you in the way that you want to be loved. And just kind of saying, hey, that's not really what I need right now. Like, I know that's what's best for me. And also, like, can we still hold some space to kind of just talk about what it feels like and see? Maybe they can, maybe they can, but you will never know unless you try to give them the opportunity to that muscle.
Because then discernment comes. Sometimes you got to experience the thing to say, maybe I need to make some adjustments, right? Sometimes discernment is not the forethought.
Right.
It can come. It's okay if it comes after. It could be hindsight.
That's one of the great things about going to therapy, though. I feel like you learn discernment and learn how to implement it and when to use it.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I definitely think that other one, like, is a good first step in relationships. I know so many people who are like, well, my friends are just not being here for me like this, or my partner's not doing this. And I'm like, have you even taken the first step and tried to tell them that this isn't working, or that you prefer it be different? Like, so many times we kind of snatch away that opportunity because it's something that doesn't come naturally to the people around us. They want to love us. Right. I'm going to assume.
So, it's honestly, that's hard for people to comprehend, because people think that people should know how to love them.
Because if they love me, they should just know. That's not how it works.
No, in the spirit of being a couples therapist, that's a big thing in couples therapy, because people say all the time, like, I just think that they should just know how to do this, and they should know how to do this. So then I put the question back on them. Okay, how would you do it? I don't know. If you don't know, how would your partner know? Yeah. Now, this is really getting outside of grief. Yeah. So we're going to come back.
Yeah. Okay. So then how do you help clients work through not grieving the death of a person, but grieving the expectations of a person? This person is not who I thought that they were. How do I grieve and accept this person for exactly how they are and how they continue to present themselves?
Hold on. Am I staying in the relationship or leaving the relationship?
It don't matter. Not even relation. It could be parents. It could be friends. It could be.
This is a therapist moment, because I
don't know. Ooh, I'm feeling some things.
Listen,
flag on the plate.
I might have triggered myself.
Wait a minute. So,
not us trembling.
Pause.
My bad.
No, wait, because that's a good question. That's a good question.
Wait.
I want to make sure that we also come back to all the different ways that we grieve outside of death. But in a minute. But this is a beautiful question.
That's a question.
Why you got me? Why I gotta answer? Okay.
I could go first.
Yes.
Okay. It is a hard thing to do. Right? Because it is a hard thing to do. But I think it's extremely important. You know how they say it is what it is? It's kind of one of those, right? I have grown to learn that it is absolutely okay to accept people in their limitations. That is no shade to them. It just is.
In the spaces that you have decided to stay in.
Correct. Or in, like, we can't choose our family, right? So
yeah.
It's so it's, how do you have to work through.
You're right.
This is the person who is very much, this is them, right? As the person who is practicing self-awareness and wanting to do things differently, the way you see people will become different, right?
Yes, true. That is true.
So how do you work through?
I'm gonna say what I do personally.
Okay.
So for me, after I have to sit with what I was expecting of them and say, was they even expecting this of themselves?
Boom.
And then 2, I have to say, okay, what makes me think that I could change this person into being what I think is best for them? My best for them is not their best for them. Even if that goes back to, I actually say this to my clients too, that goes back to respecting the autonomy of people. Even if you disagree, even if you see them self-sabotaging, then we can hold them accountable. But after so many chances, so many times, we would have to pivot and adjust these people
pivot
kind of way of being. But then I got to know my boundaries, because sometimes people will engage in said behaviors that you don't agree with, and they're not living up to their potential, which is your expectation of them. You have to limit, okay, I don't want to talk about this with you because you're not doing anything differently. That's how I have to manage it personally. And just, I try to love people through it, which is hard when it's family, because I'm like, I have all these expectations for you to do these certain things, but you're not doing them, and I know you're capable of doing it.
I try not to even have the expectations anymore. And this is a new practice for me. I try not to even have the expectation anymore. If anything, maybe it's maybe a hope, but it's not an expectation, because like you said, there is love and respect in you knowing how you want to live your life. Who am I to assume that I know how best your life should go? More than you. That feels like ego to me.
Ego, but you want these connections with these people to be meaningful, and you know that if they were living up to their potential, you would have probably more meaningful engagement and interactions.
For you though, what about for them?
Because they haven't visualized anything different.
Fair.
And so that leads me to be in a state of grief.
Yes.
About that relationship.
So I that's funny that we mentioned expectations, because I actually looked up that word, because people use it a lot. Like what is the definition of expectation? And it's literally the belief that something should happen, not that it will. It's not guaranteed. You expected it, but doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? It doesn't mean that this person is going to tap into, because yes, you do see the potential of the person, because you want what's best for them, and it's frustrating as hell when it's like, bro, you could do so much more.
Yeah.
But I got to leave you where you're at. I'm going to love you through where you're at now, and hope and pray to God that one day you'll make whatever different decisions that will make your life a little bit different.
You got to have strong boundaries with that though, because sometimes, like I said, it comes back and falls into your lap, and you're like, well, if you just do this, then you won't have to come ask me for this.
Oh no, that's a boundary. And I think that looks different. You hit on it really well with like the family portion of it. You did too, Bria, of like setting your own boundaries around and acceptance around this being who they are versus who you wanted them to be. I am usually under the assumption and practice of family. I absolutely probably got to make the adjustment.
I gotta make that adjustment.
I don't get to choose for them. And I still want to be around them, because I don't really want, unless they do something egregious, I don't want to engage in a cutoff. So I'm gonna make an adjustment for people that are not family.
Adios.
The people I get to choose, baby, you go.
And that's
we
autonomy.
Can try to work through it. But
that's you tapping into your autonomy.
If we don't have any ties to where we have to engage, I can let those go.
Okay.
Now there is still grief in who I thought you were.
There is grief in that, especially when it comes to romantic relationships. And so when it comes when it comes to romantic relationships, there is a huge aspect of grief when those end. But the way I help my clients manage that, because they start saying, you know, I don't trust myself after this romantic relationship, and how could I not know this? And I'm just gonna share romance down altogether. And I'm like, you really can't punish yourself for allowing your heart to like do what it's supposed to do, which is be loving. Don't punish yourself for that. That person showed you what your heart could do.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest lessons when you ask Britt, how do you navigate that personally and probably professionally, would probably be from that aspect of...
It has to be your motto when navigating that grief for romantic relationships.
Also, you addressed it initially. You came at it from an authentic, a vulnerable, and open place. Those are not bad places. And then whenever you figured out that something did shift or something was different, you moved accordingly. And you can't shame yourself for that.
Cannot punish yourself for it, no.
Now, we know what romanticizing is, right? When you romanticize a person, right? And I sometimes wonder, especially when clients are trying to work through who they thought this person should be, whatever the case is, right? And sometimes I don't know how this is going to translate, but sometimes it does get to a point of what version of this person are you actually grieving?
I think that's a part of the grieving steps, though, because I can also see where they go back and forth.
Yeah.
And probably where I've gone back and forth in the romanticizing versus demonizing. Like we have this pedestal versus putting them in hell kind of perspective of this is the worst person ever. We're only thinking about all of the negative things they've done. And then we have this, but this was so good and this was so good. And I've never had something like this before. So I think that's both aspects might be a part of the grieving process. But I think it's important, like you said, when we're helping people through it, to kind of acknowledge both sides. But like with most things, I tell people, but there's always like two sides of the road. Like make sure you're looking at both and having the full picture.
Right. So to move to a different aspect of grief, how do you help people or clients process grieving a life that they thought they would have or their life being different?
That's a big one.
How often do you have to do? I feel like this is
we've all had to deal with that type of grief.
This is a common that probably all of us have had in one way or another.
Yeah.
You have to. Well, for me, you just you have to really take inventory of what you've overcome, and in regards to what you've overcome, you say like, okay, where am I now? How did I get here? What role did I play? I made some decision to get here. So that decision must have been where I was at that time. And if anytime I don't like where I'm at, okay, what do I need to do differently? That's kind of where I've gotten with that, because you can be on a hamster wheel with those type of thoughts about why my life is not where it should be at 30.
Right.
That's the biggest thing.
We could throw away that should.
I know.
That should need to be thrown away, because we shouldn't speak in shoulds and ifs and always or nevers anyway.
Right. Yeah.
I'm gonna assume every day where I'm at, where my feet are planted, is probably where I should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if it's an ugly day.
Yeah. I mean, and realistically speaking, it's okay to obviously acknowledge like, okay, my life, whatever order I thought things were going to happen, either something is going to happen later, and sometimes it might not.
Delay, not denial. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it don't happen when we want it.
Right.
He may not come when you want it, but he's on time.
And I mean, one of the main things that often comes up from or with clients that I work with that are women, it's, I was supposed to be married. I was supposed to have kids.
The timelines.
I don't know. By the time I get here, I don't really know. My life feels doomed. And that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Because my hope, usually when I'm working with helping clients work through that, is, okay, I understand we can acknowledge that your life is happening a bit out of order. But how can we find ways to build a relationship with the person now? Your singlehood, right? How do you encourage yourself to have more experiences, be in the world, and then the more experiences you have, I'd imagine you might meet somebody, right?
I mean,
but the opposite ends up happening. They are upset and shamed and all of that, and they don't go nowhere.
Well,
they're in the house.
I mean, so if we're being honest, there is an element of grief in the dating world today. Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
People are coming to therapy saying they're trying to date. They want this companion. I'm established in my career. I would like to be married. I would like to have children, but it's just not happening right now because the people I'm meeting, we're just not aligning. So there is an element of grief to that. And I talk about this at least 3 times a week in therapy with clients. The life that I thought I would be living right now.
Right.
with that, I feel like it would be important to go into, which is some work that I've done, is to go into like what needs again, because all of our actions, behaviors, they're all probably stemming from some type of need. So what is the need? Is it companionship?
Yep.
Is it love? Is it comfort? Like, what is the need? And once you kind of figure out what the need is, then maybe you can find some alternative ways to get that need met in a way that you have more control over.
Okay.
Mine was maybe companionship and laughter. So I'm like, all right, let me go kick it with my girls. We gonna go out, do this, chill at home. Like, finding different ways to meet those needs.
I think so. Some of the work I've done with women and men who come to therapy saying a lot, to have companionship, to build families, that's the goal for most people. And rightfully so, because this is how we keep legacies alive and things like that. But for my clients, I say, we take out the wellness wheel and look at that wellness wheel. And sometimes I'm like, okay, where can you find purpose right now? And that can be starting a new hobby, having a better routine. And I always tell people the reason why this is important, because since we're talking about dating, is you having a foundation of your routine and self-care before you start dating. So therefore the relationship could be sustainable.
How do you prepare?
Preparing for this life that you thought you would have that may come to you one day. We're going to prepare for it.
I love that you said that, because
that's beautiful.
People put their lives on hold because they're waiting for this thing, but have done nothing to cultivate the love that they want to receive, right? So how do you practice?
Or the love you want to give.
Or the love that you want to give.
How are you at loving?
Yes.
We want so bad to be loved, but how are you practicing being loving?
Which calls into question, how ready are you for this thing?
Hello.
You're grieving.
That you're grieving. How ready are you for this thing? Because there's a misconception that I gotta save it for the one, when you've not practiced skills. Right. You've not practiced.
I said, what we saving?
Yeah, you've not practiced. Oh, well.
I had to thought we were saving.
Well.
We're gonna wrap it in the bow really nice.
That is hilarious, bro. Oh my God.
That's a good point though. All of what you said.
Yeah.
Because so initially when we were talking about grief, I wanted to talk more about other forms of grief, but we ended up talking about relationships. But that really is what's trending in the therapy room for me.
Yeah.
Is women saying like, I'm trying to date. I want this life. My mom is married. I had a client. It was a really hard first session because she wasn't really saying what she wanted to say. But by the end of the session, I realized, okay, we're dealing with grief. Because she finally said, I didn't imagine being a single mother, but here I am. And so with that grief, she's saying, my mom was a wife. I was raised in a home with two parents, and look at me. So then she's wallowing in her shame because she's a single mother of two, and she's not a wife. That's grief for her. Those sessions are hard because people literally say, I've done everything right. I've done it all right.
And that's a
where is my husband? Girl, I don't know. When you finally let me know. That is a misconception.
That we think that we're entitled.
Ooh, use that word entitled again.
It's a misconception that we think that we're entitled to the life that we want just because we do things.
Yep.
I think that's more evidence of there is no right way. There is no suppose.
No.
This is something.
There is no should.
It doesn't work. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
Yeah,
okay.
It is.
Because then you're going to be mad. Because guess what? Life be lifing.
Right.
It's going to hit you like a box of bricks.
For sure. That was something that I had to learn, because I'm relatively compliant when I need to be, right? Like I can
relatively compliant.
As far as
with
like
who, girl?
Okay. As far as I got to go to school, I can fall into the system that is required to get me to the thing, right? Like I knew I had to go to school, I knew I had to get these degrees, I knew I had to do that. All right, why these clients coming in slow? Like, why my caseload not full?
But
right?
you did what you could control.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It was a hard lesson because that's a very black and white thinking of when I do the thing that I'm supposed to get these results.
That's also what we call destination happiness, which is a problem. Destination happiness is when you think that your life is going to just magically change because you reach some destination. It don't work like that.
Not just that.
I love destination happiness. Avoid it though at all costs.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about like your focus on the outcome and not the process.
Okay.
The outcome is not ever guaranteed.
Yeah.
Girl, they want the cake, but they don't want the flour and the eggs and the milk.
You got to focus on the process and know, which helps you be good with whatever outcome that comes.
Yeah.
So I might not love the outcome. I might not want this outcome, but I know I did everything I can, everything I can control with the process, and I was present during the process.
Because trusting, I was just about to say, trusting the process keeps you present. And as Brittany, as you say, stop marrying the outcome. Don't be married to the outcome.
Yeah.
You can't.
You can't be.
You got to stay in flow.
Right, because you can't, like you had said earlier, I don't know if it was this one or the episode before, like being where my feet are planted.
Be where your feet at.
Be where your feet are at. And I've had to learn that too. It's because, it's hard being an entrepreneur, right? Like you want to do the things and you feel pulled into so many different directions and you expect certain things to happen, but it's like, hold on, slow down, player. Like you still got to learn. And so even with people and wanting, or with women in particular, the ones that I've worked with, it's okay, if you got this relationship tomorrow, would you change everything about your life, right? Like, would you stop going places? Would you stop reading? If you're saying that you will lose your identity the moment that you got into a relationship, you're not really ready for real. You really not.
Girl, that's a whole nother topic.
Well,
that's a whole nother topic. Stop breathing.
Huh? Reading, girl. We're not Mary J. Blige.
I just said stop breathing. I'm
Mary J. Blige said
stop breathing if you told me.
Because, ma'am, what is your problem?
That is such a problematic song. But I was singing the hell out of that song.
No, I skip over that part because I gotta breathe. I was breathing before, and I'm gonna breathe
if
after.
I can't have you, I'm gonna sing it for the rest of my life.
Oh my goodness! But yes, grief is attached to so many other areas of our lives. Yes, and losing a relationship or a relationship ending, a job, leaving a job, like it can feel similar to losing. It can feel like death.
It can be. In this particular session, we talked a lot about the grieving of relationships.
Yeah.
But there's so much more that you can grieve. I promise. Athletes go through a whole season of grief sometimes. That's a whole nother topic. But in light of this conversation, if you are listening and you found yourself just missing something that maybe didn't mean you well, it's okay. It's okay.
It's natural.
Sit with it. And if you want to go talk to somebody about it, you should. But you're not like weird because you're missing something that didn't mean you any good.
Exactly.
You're not weird about that. We're human and we will miss things and miss people who didn't mean us no good.
Or even ideas of what you thought were going to happen.
Yeah.
That you did imagine and they didn't come to fruition.
Because multiple things can be true.
This is true. So what would you tell people? I guess I kind of just did that about how to navigate grieving a relationship, a romantic relationship. It ended.
What's the question again? No, I'm not being. I want to make, because I have a thought, but I want to make sure.
What tip would you give people who are grieving relationships, romantic relationships that have ended?
I mean, I think it kind of goes across the board of normalizing the feeling, right? Like if you know that, if you can recognize that this was supposed to end, you accept that is a truth, and know that it is absolutely normal to still feel sad or something because it is done.
Okay.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I think the big thing for people is normalizing and telling yourself, like, it's okay, I'm a human. I don't have to pretend that I don't care just because you know that it was a bad relationship. You could still very much feel the feels because the emotions are just the emotions, and especially if they're aligned with the situation.
Okay. And if you are experiencing, these type of emotions in regards to ending a romantic relationship and you find yourself sitting in a mistrust of yourself, because I get that a lot with women who saying, I can't trust me. Yeah. I let my heart get broke. I can't trust me. I want you to come talk to a therapist because I want you to process that. And I want you to get into a place to where you can let yourself get on the market again and try it again. Because dating is not like a one size fits all. Oh, you got to get up and do it again and again and take breaks when you need to take breaks.
Right. Yeah.
I think just to add to that, I think even looking at the relationship with a growth mindset of
facts.
What did I give to this relationship? What can I grow on? Like you don't lose these beautiful pieces that you've developed just because the relationship ended.
Yes.
So how can you build on that and then look at the things that didn't work? Maybe you learned something about yourself, of something that I didn't know this was a thing for me, or I didn't know this is something that was so important. So how can I move forward, navigating new spaces with these things in mind, the strengths, the things that don't work, the things that do work.
Yeah.
So there is a intersection of grief and growth.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. To get you to acceptance.
To get you to acceptance, which is the final stage of grief.
Yes. Now, also keep in mind, guys, that there are definitely different stages of grief. However, you might not hit every stage. They don't go in any particular order. Sometimes you skip around, and sometimes you might get to acceptance sooner than you anticipated. So
Okay.
just know that grief can be as expensive as it's
It's
gonna be.
multifaceted for sure.
Saying it can ebb and flow, and
Yes.
there are grief anniversaries, times of
Yes.
years. Like
Yeah.
even sometimes if you don't remember, your body can remember. You
Facts.
can just
Yeah.
feel a little off. And you're like,
Yes.
what is going on? Might be some grief coming up, and that's okay. It's normal. It's natural.
Yeah, it is. It's natural and it's normal. And just give yourself space to feel it. Journal. Journal.
That's a good thing.
Journal about it for sure.
I love journaling.
Okay. So
we're gonna come back around to this one because it's gonna keep coming up.
this was a big one for sure. It's like I said, it's trendy, especially with dating and relationships.
Yeah.
But okay, I digress. Go love yourself.
Go love yourself.
Go love yourself.